Are you waiting for certainty before you can put yourself out there? Do you want to get married someday but fear rejection, making the wrong choice, or simply never finding the right person? Today, we're going to talk about one of the greatest obstacles to finding a great marriage: fear. The Bible doesn't promise certainty about the future, it offers something much better: faith. Today, we're going to discover why God's answer to uncertainty is to sow your seed, how to prepare yourself for an incredible marriage, and how to trust God with one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. All this and more on the Rob Skinner podcast. Today, we're talking about dating. Now, before some of my married listeners tune out, don't. This isn't just a podcast for single people. If you're married, you probably raise children, mentoring younger Christians, or leading people in your church who desperately need biblical wisdom about relationships. I believe this is one of the biggest discipleship challenges facing the church today. Recently, I taught a midweek lesson to about 200 young adults and marrieds in our downtown Boston ministry. Most of them were under 30. Afterwards, dozens of them came up and talked with me. There was so much laughing, there was so much tittering, there was so much just like making comments, laughing, joking, teasing one another. Some people thanked me. Some had tears in their eyes practically. Some said that they'd never heard dating discussed quite this way before. One theme connected over and over again. It was the issue of fear. Not lack of desire, not lack of opportunity, but fear. Fear of rejection, fear of making the wrong decision, fear of wasting time, fear of looking foolish, fear of getting hurt. And I realized something. This generation doesn't primarily need more dating advice. They need courage. So today I want to speak to you like a father speaking to a son or daughter, because I have my own kids. I've got adult children in their late 20s, early 30s. And if you're in that range, I want to talk to you. You love Jesus. You want your life to count. You'd love to build a great marriage someday, but you might be nervous. You're waiting. You're analyzing. You're hoping. You're begging God, Lord, just bring somebody my way. And you're hoping God will somehow reveal the future before you take a step. I've got good news. God has never asked his people to know the future. He's always asked us to trust him while walking into the future. And that's today's big idea. God never asks us to know the future. He asks us to trust him while walking into it. So, first thing I want to talk about, God designed most people for marriage. Let's begin in Genesis. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, it says, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a suitable helper for him." So the very first thing that God declares as not good is that of man being alone. It's loneliness. He says it's not good. Marriage wasn't invented by Hollywood, and it wasn't invented by culture. It wasn't invented by the government. Marriage was God's idea. Generally speaking, God created men and women for companionship, partnership, family. Now, that doesn't mean every Christian has to get married. Paul makes that very clear. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, in verse 7, he says, "I wish that all of you were as I am, but each of you has their own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that. Now, to the unmarried and the widows, I say, it's good for them to stay unmarried, as I do. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it's better to marry than to burn with passion." And so he says it's a gift. He said he had a gift to be able to stay unmarried, and he did fine. And so some people have that gift of singleness. And I've met people, I've talked to people, I've interviewed people on this podcast who just felt like, hey, I'm not really interested in marrying. I want to stay single. And they've done that their whole lives. They're content, they're fulfilled. They're able to devote themselves completely to God's work without feeling the desire for marriage. And I go, praise God for them. Look at Jesus, never married. Paul, never married. Some pretty good examples. I think they've made a difference in this world. But many of us don't have that gift. And if you desire marriage, that isn't a weakness. It isn't immaturity. It isn't worldliness. It's often a God-given desire. Never apologize for wanting a husband or wanting a wife. Marriage is a beautiful gift. But here's something equally important. Marriage is not your identity. Jesus is. A husband or wife can enrich your life, but only Jesus can complete it. Never confuse those two. So let's talk about who you should marry. The next question is, I think, probably even more important. Who? Not just whether you're going to get married, but who you're going to marry. God gives us a remarkably clear answer in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 in verse 14. It says this, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what can fellowship, can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever?" That's 2 Corinthians 6, 14 through 15. And goes on and talks more about that. Sometimes people hear this and think God is limiting their options. Oh my gosh, that's just so limiting. Actually, he's protecting our future. And throughout the Old Testament, God's people repeatedly drifted away because they entered relationships that pulled them away from him. I want you to think about the people going into the promised land. God said, listen, I'm giving you this whole land. Here's one thing I just don't want you to do. Don't marry those people because they got killed and expelled for a reason. Okay. They're doing just the craziest things. They don't follow me. And he told them to stay away. But guess what? They didn't listen to him. They married with the people and God punished them and he exiled them to Babylon. I mean, that was all about one primary sin, intermarrying with the people of the land. And it led them into idolatry. It led their hearts away from God and he punished them. And so you just got to go, this is not just a peripheral issue. It's not a kind of a minor thing. It's not a footnote in terms of God's plan. It's like, it's big time. Who you marry makes a huge difference and it impacts how you relate to God. Think about Solomon. Okay, wisest guy ever to live on the planet, right? Except for Jesus. Okay, when Jesus came along, he took the throne for sure. But definitely one of the wisest people who's ever lived. He didn't lose his heart overnight. It happened relationship by relationship. Remember this guy? Okay, he's got 300 marriages, 700 concubines. I mean, over 1,000 sexual relationships. Okay, you think you've got scheduling issues? You think you're busy? Oh my gosh. The issue wasn't his ethnicity, it wasn't culture, it was worship, okay? His heart slowly drifted from wholehearted devotion to God. It says his wives pulled him away from his devotion to God, and he created, altars to foreign gods, and they remained there for decades, for centuries afterwards. I mean, it was just a long-standing problem. And that's why this command matters. Ask yourself this question, not is this person attractive or is this person cool? Are they successful? Not do we have chemistry? Ask, will this person help me love Jesus more 10 years from now? And that's the question. And you got to protect your faith. You got to protect your future. I want to talk a little bit about online dating. There are some who are like, oh, I'm just going to go online. I'm going to go on a Christian dating site. Okay. Can you do it? Yes, I guess I'd say yes. But here's the thing, you don't know what you're getting. There are so many people who, put themselves out as Christian. They're nominal Christians. They're Christian in name only. Okay. Jesus talked about that in John chapter 8, verse 31. It says, to the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teachings, you're really my disciples. There's a lot of believers out there. That doesn't mean they're disciples. Okay, there's a huge difference between being a believer and a disciple of Jesus. So you just got to ask yourself, okay, does this person identify as a Christian? That's fine. That's a good start. But are they a disciple? Are they actually holding to the teachings of Jesus? That's a better question to ask. Is this person going to guide you closer to God? So you got to, decide in your own heart. I want to marry someone who's fully devoted to Christ. Let's talk about why dating has become so hard. Here's something I've watched over time. This generation isn't struggling because people don't meet. They meet all the time. Okay, Instagram, church, coffee shops, young professional events, small groups, situationships, just running into people. You probably know hundreds of people. The problem isn't access. The problem is fear. We've almost replaced dating with analysis. People text for months. They hang out. They study each other. They wonder. They overthink things. I mean, it's crazy. I talk to people here in Boston that are so talented, MIT students. I mean, post-grad students, they're so loaded with talent and ability, but they're so fearful. They're like, oh, if I take this person to Chipotle, they're going to think I'm in love with them. And I'm like, What are you talking about? Or they feel like, oh, I don't think people are going to like me, or, they're not going to be attracted. I'm like, dude, you look great. You're totally fit. You're a nice looking guy. You've got this incredible advanced degree, you got an amazing job. What are you talking about? And they try to determine whether someone's the one before they even go out and get coffee. It's crazy. And the problem is you're looking for certainty. They're looking for certainty. They want to know for sure before they even take that first step that this is going to pay off. But certainty doesn't exist in the real world. Dating isn't marriage. Dating isn't engagement. Dating is simply discovering whether you enjoy spending time together. It's okay if it doesn't work out. That's what dating is supposed to reveal. Many of us have made first dates feel like lifetime decisions, like, oh my gosh, if I step out and ask this person out, oh Lord, they're going to think I want to get married in 6 months. They're going to think I'm in love with them. I'm not joking. I mean, it's just like, it's paralysis. And that's just not the way a first date is. It's just conversation, and that's all it is. And so what's the problem is we're trying to place ourselves in the position of God where we have to know everything, know how things are going to develop in advance before we take that first step. And that's what's really, really killing the dating culture in many churches. This might be the biggest idea of today's episode. Courtship is a faith venture. It's a faith work, okay? Because you don't know who's right for you. You don't know, you can't know. You don't know where they are. You don't know when or where you'll meet them. You don't know whether this next conversation is going to change your life or not. Only God knows that. Now, I read a book a long time ago called The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb, and he talks about this, and he just says, listen, only God knows. There's an expression in Arabic called inshallah, meaning, and the word means God only knows. I mean, basically it's up to God or something like that. And just, that's the way we need to view this world, is like, only God knows. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. That's what James says. He says, listen, your life's a mist. You're making all these plans. You don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so we have to really dial it back and kind of like lower our expectations of what we're capable of. Only God knows the future. So what does he tell us? Okay, in the face of uncertainty and the reality that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, we don't know where that partner's coming from, God gives us principles in the Bible. And this, I really want you to pay attention to this. In the face of uncertainty, read Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 6. Let's take a look at that passage. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening, let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. I absolutely love this verse. This is such an important verse because Solomon's he's one of the smartest men for a reason. This is just so smart. He's saying, listen, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to work. So dealing with uncertainty, the solution is this. Since you don't know, and that's repeated throughout this passage, you don't know what's going to succeed. You don't know which effort is going to bear fruit. You don't know which conversation is going to lead to a future partner. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. Convince yourself of that. Neither do I. But here's what we do know. We can sow, we can plant, we can prepare. God doesn't promise certainty. He teaches faithfulness in the face of uncertainty. Okay, let's read Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4. Sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time they look, but find nothing. Okay, there's so many people like, how come I'm not married already? What happened? Well, you stayed home every Saturday night. You never put yourself out there. You never talked to new people at church. You never met that new guy that just walked into the fellowship. You held on to bitterness, and you just like blocked yourself from opportunities and serendipity. Okay. You have to plow the field. Okay. And you're looking for a harvest, but you didn't do the work in advance. That's what he's talking about. Farmers don't wait until they're absolutely certain. They plant, they plow, they sow, then they trust God. Let's read Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Harvest follows sowing. One of the greatest lies that fear tells us is this. If I never take a risk, I can't get hurt. That's just simply not true. Fear can hurt us so much more than rejection ever could. And some of us were just so afraid of someone saying no to us or being rejected. And one of Satan's greatest victories today is convincing good people like you to take no healthy relational risks. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It's like, oh, just be careful. Don't step yourself, be careful. Don't do this. Don't say yes. Don't. Okay, they're not the same thing. Okay. Jesus talks about that in the parable of the sower. He says this guy scatters seed. Only 25% of the seed apparently ends up in the good soil where it grows and bears fruit. That's just reality. So that's the solution. We've got to just say, I got to plant a bunch of seed. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where that relationship's going to come from. So what does sowing look like? Let's just kind of put some meat on those bones. Okay, let's talk about what does that look like just to plant a bunch of seed and really go after it. Let's get into some practicals here. First, become the kind of person that you're hoping to marry. Okay, someone once said this. I think it was Andy Stanley said, become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. That's great advice. Okay, that's super advice. And I'm sure you can find this a lot on social media. But you got to think, okay, you want this like super studly guy who's just amazing. He has his quiet times every day. He loves his mom. Comes from a great family. He's got an advanced degree. He earns, $300,000 a year. He's got a retirement account already built up. I mean, he takes 6-week vacations in the Mediterranean regularly. You go, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, he's really tan. He looks really awesome. Okay, that's great. Don't ask yourself, okay, I know you want that person. What is that person? What's he looking for? That's the person you need to become. Okay, that's your challenge. And so, first of all, grow spiritually. You got to be growing. You've got to be really just peeking out spiritually. How do you know if you're growing spiritually? One, people comment on it. He says, let your progress be evident to all. Paul tells that to Timothy. He says, let everyone see your progress. That's the way you know you're growing is people go, whoa, you're growing. They'll tell you. They say you're different. Two, I think you can tell you know you're growing spiritually because you're happy. You have a smile on your face. You like coming to church. You're not just hunkered down. I see this in the fellowship, different churches. People just hunkered down. They've got their own row. They sit with the same people. They sit with their roommates. They don't let anyone else in their group. Their body posture is terrible. They're just slumped over. They're not smiling. They're not fired up. And it's just like, man, that person, it's not attractive. It's not the kind of light and joyful spirituality that radiates. Like that person's radiating. Learn emotional health. Okay. Figure out what's going to take for you to be healthy. Forgive people who've hurt you. Maybe you've had some breakups. Maybe you've had some people let you down and just say, I don't want a relationship with you. Maybe you had this person you thought you were going to get married to and they just dumped you and it was nasty and it was terrible. And I'm sorry that happened. Got to forgive them. You got to move on. You can't let that person and what they did just mortgage your future because you won't let that person go. Deal with bitterness. Deal with insecurity. Become joyful. Become dependable. Become humble. Healthy people usually build healthier marriages. Second, trust God. Okay, this is really important. You got to trust God. Think about Adam. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 2. It says in verse 20, but for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Okay, some of us are thinking that, God has just defaulted on his promise. There's no one out there for them. And God just is like gypped him. Okay, maybe that's where you're at. But I want you to just reason with me for a second. Okay, if anyone could have believed that there wasn't someone for him or her, it was Adam. Okay, literally, there was nobody. I mean, literally, there was just a lot of animals. There's cows, there's goats. He's like, nope, those do not look attractive to me. And so while Adam slept, God performed a little surgery, took out a rib, and created Eve for him. Because remember, God says it's not good for this guy to be alone. God was working. And some listening here, you feel forgotten. You feel like God has just totally, forgotten me, passed over me. And you wonder if God just skipped your name. Listen, If God could provide for Adam when there wasn't another human being on earth, don't you think he can handle your future? Just reason with me. There are over 8 billion people alive today. Okay, when I was growing up, 40 years ago, I think it was more like 6. I mean, it's just really grown, okay? But you got to trust him. You got to go, listen, if God could do it with nobody, he can definitely do it when he's got billions of men and women to choose from to bring into your life. Infinitely easier for him, even though that wasn't difficult. Nothing's impossible. Nothing is too hard for God. And you got to pray about it. And so reason with him, have the faith to say, okay, God can do it. But you got to pray. When I was single, I had this girlfriend. I really was totally in love with her. I was just about to ask her to marry me. I just thought she's totally the one. She's got everything I want. But then I tanked spiritually. I've talked about this before. I just did bad spiritually. And so I got some advice and they're like, hey, why don't you just take a break and, stop being all mopey and just focus on your relationship with God and then pick up the relationship where you left off after you kind of get your relationship with God on straight. I thought it was great advice. And so I just said, hey, I'm going to need to break it off here. Nothing about you. I'm just not doing good spiritually. And she was fine with that. But the understanding is we were going to get back together once I started doing better spiritually. Well, I repented, praise God. But when I started doing better spiritually, I wasn't interested any longer. My feelings had changed. Okay. And I still thought she was amazing, but just wasn't there. I don't know why. It just didn't have the same feelings. And so then I was really lost because I'm like, this woman, she was like everything. She was like, had it all for me. I couldn't imagine anyone better or more pretty or anything. Like she just had it all. And so at that point, I thought, uh-oh, what am I going to do? And so I just started praying. I went out on a prayer walk through the streets of Berkeley every night for about 9 months. I'm like, God, first of all, there's 6 billion people out there. There's got to be someone, even if you have to bring them from around the world, you could do that. You have that kind of power. And so I just started reasoning with God, starting to pray to him every night. I said, please bring me someone. And I just said, listen, I thought in my own thinking that this was the person for me, but it wasn't. So please just choose the person that you think is best for me. And so I just gave it up to God, just surrendered it to him and said, listen, I thought she was the right one, but she wasn't. So please, you bring the person you think is the right person for me. And guess what? 9 months later, Pam Wilkinson flew into town from Cairo, Egypt, around the world. And just a little over a year later, we were married. Now, I'm not saying if you pray for 9 months, you're going to meet your spouse. Okay, please don't misunderstand me here. Prayer changes us. I had to surrender. I had to reason with God. I had to dig deep. I had to just go, okay, listen, God has the power to do it. Prayer reminds us God is the one writing the story. And I want to talk to you here next about taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself. In 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 7, when Samuel is is called by God to select the next king to replace Saul, it says that the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. That's 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 7. So it says, people look at the outward appearance, God looks at the heart. Is the heart important? Absolutely. God looks at the heart. He looks right into you. He sees what's going on. It can be kind of humbling and scary at the same time. But that doesn't mean we ignore ourselves physically, okay? We got to deal with reality here. We are real beings living in a real world, and we got to accept the fact people look at the outward appearance. They make judgments based on the outside. They cannot see into the inside. So you can't just go, oh, they just need to know my heart. And, if they can't see what's really going on inside, I don't want okay, that's really kind of foolish, I'd say, just really foolish. So you got to take a look and just say, okay, how am I doing physically? Am I in shape? Am I in a reasonable, I don't need to be shredded, I don't need to have a six pack, but am I in range physically? Do I exercise? Do I sleep, get enough sleep? Am I always to have bags under my eyes? Do I dress well as I can? I need to learn to communicate. I need to smile. I need to develop interests in life, become interesting. I need to have a salty conversation, just season with salt. I need to become healthy. I need to use deodorant. I need to brush my teeth and not blow people away with bad breath. Just some simple things. Sometimes we're killing ourselves because we really want to get married, but we've got some like barriers that other people are noticing, but we're blind to. So you got to become the best steward of the life that God has given you and just go, okay, this stuff, it's not everything, but it matters to people. And so you don't want to do something that you're not aware of that's really holding you back from finding the right person. And finally, in terms of sowing seed, you got to ask people out. You got to ask people out and you got to allow yourself to be asked out. Now, I know that there's some listening who are in India and in countries where there's, prearranged, arranged marriages from either, your family or maybe a matchmaker in the church. And I know that that's so I'm talking here primarily to Western cultures where things are a little bit different and there's more just kind of like dating. So you got to ask people out. Notice I didn't say propose. Okay. I didn't say find your soulmate. I just said ask someone to coffee, go for a walk, have lunch, join a group date, build friendships. When someone you don't know asks out, say, okay, I'll give it a shot. Laugh, have fun, lower the bar of expectations, remove the pressure. Your goal isn't finding your spouse on the first date. Okay. I talk to people like, yeah, but I don't have any chemistry with that person. I'm not going to say yes. Okay. That's really foolish because a lot of times you don't know, you may not have chemistry with the person. I've heard so many stories of people that, oh yeah, we worked together in the ministry or we worked at a job for like 2 years. We were friends, that we were dating different people at the time. We just built a friendship over time. And then, something changed and we started to like each other. I go, that happens all the time. Your goal is simply discovering whether you'd enjoy a second date when you ask somebody out. That's it. It's not, you're not getting married. Okay. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. That's all. Sometimes the right person is already sitting across the room. They're already in your church. You've already talked to them. Sometimes they're already at your work or whatever. Sometimes friendship grows into something so much deeper. So don't let fear keep you from discovering what God may already be doing. So now let's talk a little bit about dating, what I call dating steady. This is an older term, but I mean dating. You've asked somebody out. There's definitely a mutual like, and you go, okay, I want to date this person consistently week after week. Okay, two people decide that they want to seriously pursue one another and find out if it's going to go to marriage or not. Okay, God's expectation is really simple. He says absolute purity. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 1 through 2, it says treat younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Okay, Pam and I dated with conviction. Now, I had relationships prior to my becoming a Christian that were impure. Okay, they were immoral. They were not right. Okay. And I knew in my heart, it's not right. I don't want that anymore. It really undercuts relationships and friendship building. I'll talk more about that. But people laugh when I talk about this story because when we were dating, we'd set some boundaries. We held hands, which was amazing. That just felt like lightning going up my arm. The first time I held her hand, I was like, oh my gosh. Just like, whoa, it's incredible. It's like that song, Fly Me to the Moon. In other words, hold my hand. It's like fly me to the moon. It's like, oh, I felt like I'm flying to the moon. But our big weekly kiss was what we joke, I called it a 3 alligator kiss. It's 3 seconds long, closed mouth kiss. And that was, what I allowed myself once a week. And so when I said goodnight to her on that Saturday night after dropping her off, gave her a kiss, it was amazing. It was just like, whoa, I'm in heaven. This is incredible. But that was it. I mean, that was it. And it was awesome because we held hands. We just had really simple, limited, physical contact. We built the friendship. We built trust. We built spiritual leadership, or at least I did. And when we stood at the altar, there wasn't fear, there wasn't guilt, there wasn't shame, there wasn't suspicion, there wasn't regret. There was just absolute trust. Purity isn't about legalism, it's about freedom. It gives friendship the room it needs to really grow and deepen, and it protects trust. I've gone on so many trips, without Pam, real estate training trips, ministry trips, and she never wonders like, what am I going to be messing around? She knows I know how to keep it together and walk the line. And so when you have that purity, it protects your future marriage. It allows your relationship to rest on something much stronger than physical attraction. Now, if you're dating somebody and you're messing around and you're crossing the line, you need to repent. Okay. You need to go after. Now, this isn't a sermon, but you need to get help and you need to stop cutting corners and doing things like, oh, we'll just confess it to each other. We won't tell anybody else because we're just going to tell it to each other. Okay. That's deception. Okay. That's totally going to lead you down the wrong road. And I've seen guys and they become really passive. And if you're a woman listening to this, understand this. If you're dating a guy and you guys are involved physically, you're not going to respect that guy once you get married because you know he didn't stand firm when he was really tested. And that's what you need. You need a guy that's going to say no and has the capacity to turn away from sin and temptation. He's being tested. He's got to pass that test. Don't make it easier for him. And so build friendship first. Here's a final thought. Our culture tells us that chemistry is everything. I disagree. Chemistry is really wonderful. There needs to be a spark for sure, but friendship is better. The question isn't, do we have butterflies? Okay, that's a great feeling. Oh boy, this is amazing. The question is, can I imagine sitting across from the breakfast table from this person 30 years from now? My wife and I are coming up on our 36th wedding anniversary this August. And I just go, man, I love being with her. I laugh almost every day. I mean, we just hold hands, we kiss. I just go, she's the best friend I've ever had. It's just exactly what I wanted. God gave me just the person that just exceeded my expectations in every dimension. But you got to ask yourselves, can we laugh together? Can we pray together? Do we want to serve together, raise children together, walk through suffering together? Can I imagine myself growing old together with this person? The strongest marriages I've seen aren't built on excitement or sexuality alone. They're also built on deep, deep friendship. When you delay physical intimacy until marriage, you give friendship the time to take root and become the foundation for an awesome marriage. And that's the kind of marriage that's going to last. Let me leave you with this. Stop asking God for certainty. Stop waiting to know whether this is going to work or not. I think about like reaching out, evangelism. Okay. You don't go, oh, this person doesn't look open, so I'm not going to share my faith with them. No, they just don't look open. They don't sound open. You just share your faith. They might be open. And you've met people before that didn't seem open initially and turned out to be very open. And other people that seemed initially open, but they weren't open. Stop asking God for certainty. Stop asking for God to have the power to see the future. That's his realm. That's not your realm. Start asking him for courage. Because certainty belongs to God. Courage belongs to disciples. Walk forward, trust him, sow your seed, plow your fields, become someone worth marrying, protect your purity, ask someone to coffee, build friendships, pray every day, and leave tomorrow where it's always belonged, in the hands of God. I truly believe God has wonderful plans for your life, whether you're 22 or 32, 28, 38, 68. Just keep trusting him, keep sowing faithfully. Don't let fear steal the future God may be preparing for you. Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, read and review one of my books. Okay, I've written 4 books now. Just finished a book called Before You Quit. Before that, it was The 10X Christian. I've got a book on church planting and a book on courage, how to make this life count. You can find all of those on Amazon.com. You can order the paper version or the electronic version, or you can go to my website at robskinner.com. When you read them, please give me a review. Okay, that's how other people find it. You can also support this ministry through my website. Okay, I've got a link in the show notes if you want to support it. I appreciate it. There's so many people that have helped me. I really appreciate it. It helps me to get the work done. Because my goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.